Very quiet class.
It'll be loud in just a minute. As we go through.
Yeah.
All right, so one of the first exercises we're going to do is going to be on the piece of paper, and I'll have you copy what is up on the board.
Okay.
Not this one. Let me switch my sounds. So we're just going to write on the piece of paper. I look forward to working with you today, and then sign it. So this is my signature, but you put your own signature on the piece of paper.
You write also, I look forward to working with you today.
Yes.
After sign.
Yes. And then make sure you put your own signature on the bottom, not mine.
Your own signature. Yes.
All right. So if you could all switch them, you can plan to each other, yeah, your neighbors. So we're going to be talking about analyzing signatures today. So this is a list of all kinds of, these are all different famous people's signatures. Talk among yourselves first, and then I'll write some stuff on the board that you, the responses you give me. But do you recognize any of these signatures? So just talk among yourselves and see if you can think of who maybe some of them are.
Who is this sign? Like,
Yes, who wrote their name?
okay. Pablo Picasso, like.
Yeah, just talking to each other right now. Okay.
Picasso.
What's these?
Disney. Disney. Michael Jackson. Yates. Yates. Doctor.
They have to write the paper on paper, no?
Just talking is fine.
Okay. Picasso. Who's Picasso?
Yates, Picasso, Michael Jackson, okay.
Yes, Michael Jackson.
Bob Marley.
Oh, Michael Jackson.
This one is Bob Marley.
So there were a few you guys knew. Which ones did you know?
One is Picasso.
Picasso, yep.
Picasso.
Walt Disney.
Walt Disney.
Disney.
Yeah, everybody knows this, by the way.
And
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, yeah.
Michael
Michael
Jackson.
Jackson.
Michael Jackson.
This
Those are the easier ones to read.
is Bob Marley.
So Sorry?
Bob Marley? Marley.
No. This one?
No, it's, yeah, last year, this one, yeah.
This one?
Yes.
That's Miley Cyrus.
Miley.
Do you know who she is?
Mm.
She's an American singer.
Ah,
She's younger. I put some in case we had younger students or older students.
no.
So all of these people, we know some things about them, right? And they have their public life, is what we know, and then they also have their private life. So some things personally, right? So let's talk about what kinds of things do we know about some of these people. Public versus what we know, or maybe think we know about them privately. Their private life.
Okay.
Well, what do we know about Walt Disney?
Disney's cartoon movies.
Mm-hmm.
Disneyland.
So what he did, his job, because we know that about Michael Jackson.
Yes.
He's a singer. Mm-hmm. What else do we know about?
Biggest businessman.
Mm-hmm.
Technical.
Joe. Business.
Picasso is a actor, painter.
Yep, painter.
Painter, yes.
So we have.
Drawing print, yes.
Jason is technical business. Jojo. Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. Mm-hmm. He was the singer.
Singing.
Yeah.
Dancer.
Yeah.
Hello, come on.
Um,
So we're talking about what we know about these famous people. What we know about them in their public life and then in their private life, their whole private.
Michael Jackson.
What do we know about them in their private life?
Right.
How do you what to do with this? Just sign your name?
Yes. Biggest rich man.
Okay. Many of them were very rich. Do we know? So we don't know all of them yet, do we? You know who this is. You probably just can't read it. That's Barack Obama.
Oh.
Yeah.
Obama.
Mhm. And you probably know this man. This is Albert Einstein.
Oh. Alright.
Albert Einstein, the scientist.
Yes.
You probably know this person too. This is J.K. Rowling. She wrote the Harry Potter books.
J.K.
J.K.
is
Rowling.
U.S. president.
No,
Nope.
she's the writer of,
Harry Potter.
yes,
Oh,
it's Harry
okay.
Potter.
Mm-hmm. So it's just J.K. her initials. Mm-hmm.
J.K. Rowling. That's Harry Potter, yes.
You know this person too, probably. Can we read it?
Oh.
No question?
Oh,
Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah
I heard
Winfrey,
that
yeah.
stuff, yeah? So we know lots more about their public lives now.
Yeah.
We have more. Marilyn Monroe is up in the
Oh,
corner,
she is.
another actress, a famous actress. Mhm. And Elizabeth Taylor.
And I can see Jessica too.
But that wasn't my signature, mine was on the other page. So we know a lot about their public life and what kinds of things they shared with the world. But then there's also stuff about their private life that we may or may not know. Most of the time, they like to keep their private lives a secret, right? Are we familiar with the word secretive?
Yeah, Barack Obama was smart, for example.
Okay, yep, many of them were.
He have two daughters, Sasha and another one. He have two daughters,
Yeah, so their family,
family.
but a lot of this is secretive.
Secret.
There is another word for it, is confidential.
Confidential, yes, that's another good word for secretive.
Confidential.
this means? We keep it private and don't tell other people.
Secret.
Yep, secretive is something that you don't tell other people. So maybe you bought somebody a present. They're having a birthday or it's a holiday. So you buy them a present and it's a secretive thing. It is a secret gift. It comes from the word secret. To keep something secretive is to keep it private. And another thing we kind of talked about, you could not read some of these signatures, right? Some of them that were very hard to read. So that's another word that you might want to note. It's legibility or legible. So how legible is their signature? Barack Obama, we almost couldn't read. I didn't know who it was either, initially. This one is very illegible.
Yes.
Whereas John Hancock, Picasso, Dr. Seuss, he writes children's books. They're legible, very easy to read. So let's take a listen to a tape about people's signatures. Welcome, hello. And the first time you listen, I just want you to think about what part of looking at the signature are they talking about? So they're going to talk about how to get people's personality ideas from their signature. So what part of the signature are they looking at when they're doing this part? Let me try that. So before I play it, I just want to double check. So we're just listening. Are you doing this in groups or are you doing this by yourself?
Group writing is one.
Group you think is better. Sometimes it is. And after we're done, first we're going to listen by ourselves and then we will talk about it in our groups. Okay?
One 1.17. What's in your signature?
Our signature is very much part of the way in which we present ourselves to the world, so it can definitely give us some clues about the kind of person we are and how we feel about ourselves.
We just started with the beginning of it, but what do we think this is going to be about in this part? Let's talk among our groups and confer with your neighbors, see what you think they're going to talk about with their signature, okay?
Can I listen one more?
Let's do it one more time?
Yeah.
Sure. Do it one more time.
1.17. What's in your signature?
Our signature is very much part of the way in which we present ourselves to the world, so it can definitely give us some clues about the kind of person we are and how we feel about ourselves.
Take a minute to think about it, and then discuss in our groups. Do you have any ideas about what maybe we're going to listen about?
Everyone like personal life from his signature. Okay. So
That's it, right?
like I don't know like what is read, but like signature, you know signature. Okay. It gives you clue of how the personality is. Maybe I love playing football, so like clues like about what do you do, what things you like, how do you see. So it gives you the
signature, how can
I'm gonna write down my signature.
So what do we think they might be talking about on the tape?
Pardon?
What are we going to listen to this section? What's it going to be about?
Okay.
What were your ideas?
asking like important things.
Some important things?
Yes.
Other ideas?
Clues about your life.
For check your ID.
Sorry, your
For
idea?
check your ID, your personal.
Checking some different things about your life?
In the world.
Mm-hmm.
About.
Yep, so this is all, sounds like what they were talking about, right? They said we're going to talk about your signature and what kinds of things you can learn from your signature. So, if you guys would sign your name on this piece of paper and then we'll switch. At the end, we're gonna look at our own signature. So I will pass out a sheet for the next section so we can listen a little bit more closely. Need a pen or pencil?
Yeah, please.
Yes.
So what do I do? I put my
Put your name, yes, your signature.
You're feeling this one? Excuse me.
When we listen,
After listening.
we're going to fill it in, yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are we ready to listen to the whole thing?
Yes.
1.17. What's in your signature?
Our signature is very much part of the way in which we present ourselves to the world, so it can definitely give us some clues about the kind of person we are and how we feel about ourselves. As you know, a person's signature usually consists of a first name and a last name, or an initial and a last name. Your first name represents your private self, how you are with your family, and your last name represents your public self, the way you are at work or school and in your social life. If you use only initials, either for your first name or your last name in your signature, this means that you are more secretive and protective about either your private or public self. Now, look at the space between your name and last name. Are the two names very close together, or is there a reasonable space between them? The more space there is between your name and your last name, the more you wish to keep these two parts of your personality separate.
Do you want to listen to it again?
Yeah, please.
1.17. What's in your signature?
Our signature is very much part of the way in which we present ourselves to the world, so it can definitely give us some clues about the kind of person we are and how we feel about ourselves. As you know, a person's signature usually consists of a first name and a last name, or an initial and a last name. Your first name represents your private self, how you are with your family, and your last name represents your public self, the way you are at work or school and in your social life. If you use only initials, either for your first name or your last name in your signature, this means that you are more secretive and protective about either your private or public self. Now, look at the space between your name and last name. Are the two names very close together, or is there a reasonable space between them? The more space there is between your name and your last name, the more you wish to keep these two parts of your personality separate.
Okay, let's talk in our groups about what we think they were telling us what the answers were.
Used for working, for friends, this is secret. Is more reserved for the countries, family, very close. Keep how you are able to how you are with your family. If your name is used for family and friends. Let's meet together as a group. So your first name was already listed, your private self. What do we think your last name will say?
Last name is common, is public self. It's
Public
common
self?
between worker, social need.
Social life.
Social life?
Yes.
Any other answers?
Secret.
No, secret is for name.
How about if you use only your initials?
Protocol.
It's for secret.
Protect.
Okay.
It's for protection.
Is it
Public.
secret as
Yeah,
well?
the secret is for
It's more
protection.
public. Also public.
Also public?
Then
Protected.
Protective? Any other answers? And if there's a space between your first name and your last name? What was that?
sometimes
Personal separate? Personal was separate from what?
The name is separated with the last name.
It was separated from your last name?
Yes.
Mhm.
This is the
Any other ideas? Any other thoughts right now?
Yeah, I have
and keep your name and last name.
Keep your name,
And last name.
keep your first and your last name?
Yes.
You have one more?
Oh yeah, I have wrote down more space, the more you wish to keep your life secretive and personal. Secret.
more space, the more secretive.
You wish to keep your life secretive and personal to your own self.
Hello. All right, so we have a lot of good ideas. So your last name is your public self, your social life, secret.
No.
We don't think that one said secret? Okay, so we question that. And what do we think about you use only your initials, either for your first name or your last name? Protective, private, secretive. Sounds like I think I heard that on the tape too.
Yes.
Yes.
How about, there's a space between your first name and your last name. Personal separated from your last name, keep your first and last name. And I think this kind of summarizes the whole thing. More space, the more you're keeping your personal life separate from your first name and your last name. So you're keeping those two lives apart. Sounds like that's what you were all saying at the same time. So let's check on this one. What does your last name mean? We can listen again.
I listen,
Mm-hmm.
I listen something about the last question.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that write close by the initial
Mm-hmm.
name and last name is close by.
It can be close
Yeah.
together too. So maybe we'll listen to the last one also and see what he said. So let's listen to the one about, I'm sorry if that comes up on top, not sure how to separate it. We'll work on the technology for next time.
First name represents your private self, how you are with your family. And your last name represents your public self, the way you are at work or school and in your social life.
So your last name was your public self, your social life.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's never been
Which
like-
sometimes could be secretive.
But
But
what
not-
we already told here is public, social,
Sure.
how we can match is security. Already is public, already is.
Sure, that is your
social.
public self,
We
it's
cannot
not so much
this
social.
security. Yes.
Right.
It's a secret pool.
Maybe you're a private person. But sure, that was more the public
Yes.
self. And then the space, you wanna listen to that one again?
Now, look at the space between your name and last name. Are the two names very close together, or is there a reasonable space between them? The more space there is between your name and your last name, the more you wish to keep these two parts of your personality separate.
So the more space between your first name and your last name, the more you wanna keep these two parts separate. So maybe your public self and your private self, you don't want them to be the same. Or if they're close together, then maybe you don't mind sharing. We shared some last week. So some things, of course, we made public to each other, yesterday. Not last week. When we were talking yesterday, we shared some things about ourselves. Okay, so, sorry,
So does it mean like, you can call me from my last name, not my first name, right? Or when I call someone?
so what do we call somebody?
Yeah.
Yep, so that depends on the situation. So this is about looking at your signature and what that signature says about you,
Okay.
but that's a different topic. Right, so what I call you might be different, than what your signature would be. If
Yeah,
I met
it's
one of
obviously-
those famous people, I would call them Mr. or Miss whomever.
Oh,
So if I met Albert Einstein, I would call him Mr. Einstein. He's dead, but I would certainly not call them by their first name.
okay. Last name.
Okay. So let's look at the signatures that we wrote down. Actually, we have one more person. Would you just sign your name on there and then we'll exchange with somebody else in the group? So did you guys sign your names? Put your name on the paper and then exchange with one another. So give your signature to somebody else. Yeah, so then we can just change, we don't have to write something down. We can just put the signature down.
No.
That's okay. And then using the information that we found out from the tape, what do we think about, it says about this signature? So do we switch? So give to each other. Yeah.
So for you?
There we go. Maybe give them mine over to Mohammed. There we go. And then we can all look at one. So for 2 minutes, look at the signature of your neighbor and what does it say about your neighbor? So what does it say about their personal life, their private life? Do they keep them separate? The things we learned from the tape.
Public signatures? This is public signature. Family name or your name?
No, what is your signature means?
For example, this is my signature. But we have
The other one,
You don't have
maybe,
If you don't have any
Yes.
signature, then do you have a first and a last name?
I have
My signature
I have to see my,
Yes.
this one
Okay,
for,
so then
This is your phone.
maybe,
and this,
you can look at what does this say. You can do your English one?
when I work, when
I
I
will
work,
look at that document. It's private, secret, okay?
and I have, will see, that, that's what your signature. This is my signature.
That's not just a message.
This is your signature? Oh, yes.
Yes, my name is signature. I don't have.
This one is this.
For public and for private center.
So, and this is my,
This full person. It's now a space. Public.
And that was yours?
No,
My name.
yes, yes.
Is it your actual
So,
signature?
and yes, she had this very.
So your public and your private life are the same.
Secret.
I know.
Yes, start dance. You can see. And yes.
My name.
Maybe if she.
It's third paragraph. She's signature is third paragraph. There is a space between your first name and last name. For
This is nearby initial, because she uses initial in the first family.
Oh, the question, sorry. So what did we think about each other's signature? What did we learn?
very difficult.
It's not easy to do.
Yes, if they are not explained, not easy to read this.
Mm-hmm. It's not easy to figure out. Is there a big space? Is there a little space? What do we think about some of the celebrity signatures?
Celebrity.
So these are the famous people that we had
Yes.
at the beginning. So, there's There's not much of a space here, is there?
Yes.
Not space. First,
His first name runs right into his
Perfect.
last name.
family name.
What else do we think about some of these people? Does anybody have a separated one, a close one?
Yes, Bill Gates is separate, for example.
Which one? Sorry, Bill Gates?
Bill Gates, yeah.
Yeah, that's separated. And I took all of these signatures and shrunk them to fit the page. So it sometimes is hard to know for sure
Yes.
how big or how small they would be.
This is maybe a secret. Last, yes.
This one,
No, yes.
J.K. Rowling?
Yes.
Yeah, it's all smushed together.
Like labyrinth.
Mhm. And then some people sign with their first name on top and their last name below.
Albert Einstein is first and second. name.
You think that might be secreted? They didn't even talk about that. But that's interesting too.
What
Do you wanna
about,
look at mine?
what about Picasso?
What about Picasso? Him had one?
No, only name.
Him being. He didn't write Pablo Picasso, it's just Picasso.
Picasso, his family name or his?
It is his family name,
family name,
yes. We can look at mine real quick if we want to. I guess there's a bit of a space right there. This is my middle name. I sign with my middle initial.
Initial.
Middle name, what?
Initial.
Marie.
Mary, okay.
So Jessica Marie Leading. So I have a bit of a space between my first name and my other names. So maybe I'm a little secret.
Yes.
A little
of course.
secret. But not much, actually. So do we think that this is true? Do we think we really know for sure about people?
Sometimes, depends.
Not easy to analyze people's life.
Right?
But I think your signature is here. You are a space. It means you have to a little bit far to your family name, your family's personality.
Yeah.
Much far.
That's funny. This is my electronic signature.
Yeah.
So this is one that I wrote out officially. But when I usually sign my name, it usually is much closer. And I never
Yes.
noticed until I did this. But this one I wrote 7 or 8 years ago. So, and they change, right? Your signature can change. So, I think my time is about up. And I will pass things over to Eric.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You guys were great.